All right, this video is going to hurt a little bit. So these are my top 3 reasons why AKs actually kind of suck. Welcome back to the Muzzle Bro channel, everybody. I appreciate you being here. And if you've seen any one of my videos, you're going to know that I'm a huge AK nerd. I love the AK platform. I would say my favorite guns, hands down, are AKs and AK variants. There's just something about them that really just does it for me. I love shooting them at the range. I run them in competitions, and I run them from home defense setups as well. But I think it's always good in life to take a step back and see things from the other side. And that's why today we're talking about the top 3 reasons why running AKs isn't actually ideal. So hopping right into it with my number 3 reason that AKs kind of suck is going to be the recoil impulse. For this category specifically, I'm talking about the traditional AK round, the 7.62 by 39. Obviously, we can't get some AKs chambered in 5.56, but it's kind of like kissing your cousin. It's okay, but it's not as cool as the real thing. An AK chambered in 7.62 by 39 in that traditional cartridge is really just going to have quite a little bit more recoil than the standard AR caliber of 5.56. Now, of course, we can kind of get in the weeds and talk about 5.56 AKs or 300 blackout ARs or 308 ARs, but we're not doing that today because I don't really want to. So when we're comparing the traditional 7.62 by 39 to 5.56, you're just going to get more recoil. Now, there are absolutely some things you could do to mitigate that. For example, on the Rifle Dynamics Quick Hatch here, I am running a Griffin Armament 2-port muzzle brake, and that brake actually does a really phenomenal job of keeping that gun pretty damn flat. Now, is it as soft as a 5.56 recoil? Even with the muzzle brake, it's not. And to be incredibly honest, do I really mind the recoil? As an avid AK shooter and a little bit of a bigger dude, it doesn't really bother me too much, but where it does piss me off quite a bit is when I'm running one of my AKs against one of my buddies running an AR. Even with a pretty good muzzle device, an upgraded trigger, and a good purchase on the weapon system, it's pretty easy to get outrun by a 5.56 AR shooter, even if they're not necessarily a better shooter than you. The recoil of the 7.62 by 39 AK, it just puts you at a little bit more of a disadvantage when we're trying to shoot very quickly compared to a 5.56 AR. I do ballistically like the 7.62 by 39 round a lot better than the 5.56. I especially love that it ballistically does pretty darn good out of these shorter barrels, so I can run a shorter weapon system for my home defense guns, but I guess that's not the point of the video. I'm supposed to really be talking about why these suck, and as you can tell, I can't help but fighting for them and falling in love with them. Alrighty, so let's move on to our number 2 reason why shooting AKs kind of sucks, and I'm kind of going to have to label that as ease of suppression. So as you can see, we do have a Dead Air Wolverine on this RPK Romanian parts kit build, so these weapons definitely can be suppressed. And even though that Wolverine is kind of like a specialty AK suppressor, you definitely can run more traditional AR suppressors on your AKs as well. But that being said, suppressing AKs definitely have some disadvantages. The long stroke gas piston operating system of the AK isn't intrinsically the easiest and best to suppress. It has a pretty violent action of this bolt slamming back to the rear of the system every time you shoot, and that's kind of exacerbated by something like a suppressor getting more gas back into the system. Now, you definitely can run adjustable gas blocks on AKs. The Rifle Dynamics Quick Hatch here does have an adjustable gas block in the handguard here, but even when I tune this gas down all the way so that it's just barely cycling reliably with the suppressor, I unfortunately still do get a ton of gas back to the face, much more so than I do with something like my AR-15s. Although you definitely can suppress AKs, I still feel that you get more gas blowback to the face, and that's even with an adjustable gas block. Now, for a more traditional AK, you can get like something like a K&S adjustable gas piston, which is a good option if you're running your gun suppressed more often than not. But it's not really a great option if you want to rip the suppressor on and off every other day like we do here on the channel. It's kind of a pain in the butt to get to that gas piston. You really do kind of have to take the whole gun apart and adjust the piston, and that kind of makes tuning it a bit of a pain in the ass. So although the AKs can have adjustable gas blocks and you can tune them a little bit for suppressor use, they're just not as good as an AR, unfortunately. One other thing to note that I'm kind of throwing in with the suppressor category is the heat. So AKs heat up, and they heat up fast. That's why you're seeing a lot of the AK nerds run a big glove on their left hand, because the gas is coming right through this gas tube here, and that just heats it up really fast, and that's right where your hand sits on the weapon system. And that's even without a suppressor. AKs are going to heat up really quick, and when you add a suppressor to that, it heats up the system even faster. So between the gas blowback and the extra heat, it's kind of why it's number 2 on my list of why it sucks to shoot AKs, is they're kind of a pain to suppress. So we've already covered the increased recoil of a 7.62 by 39 AK, and kind of the pain in the butt that suppressors bring to the AK platform. But there's one thing that I think trumps both of those, and that's going to be my number 1 reason why shooting an AK kind of sucks, and that's just going to be the price. Now, when I say price, I truly mean price. Well, what are you talking about, Brokey? Are you talking about the gun? Are you talking about the rounds? Are you talking about aftermarket? aftermarket parts, I'm talking about absolutely everything. AKs themselves, as in the guns, are just more expensive than ARs. I could put together a real crappy AR build for probably about $300, and for an AK, there's no way. The cheapest AK you're going to find on the market is probably from like Palmetto State Armory, and it's going to be a blemished GF3 AK, and it's still going to probably run you $700 to $800. And you can get like the cheapest bottom of the line AR for less than half that cost. Now, obviously, I love my AKs, so I don't mind spending a little bit more money on them. The Rifle Dynamics Quick Catch here was north of $3,000. This is actually a Palmetto State Armory GF4 AK that was without all the aftermarket upgrades that I did, over $1,000. And the Romanian parts kit RPK build that I have here ran in at about $2,000 as well. So obviously, these guns are not the cheapest. And that brings us to rounds. Again, we're talking kind of about that 7.62x39 round here specifically. But I will also add the 5.45 round is even worse. With all of these ammo bans and all that, it's really skyrocketed the price. I know there are some American companies now that are making 7.62x39, but it's still just kind of expensive. And what really breaks my heart is when I hear the old heads talk about how they got like cases of 7.62x39 for like $100 back like a handful of years ago. It really does break my heart because it's really difficult to find 7.62x39 for a reasonable price nowadays. So we have a more expensive gun that shoots a more expensive round and also takes kind of more expensive aftermarket parts. Again, comparing it directly to an AR-15, there are so many manufacturers that make AR-15 parts. That's really why you're able to put one together at home for probably like $300 or $400. You can find a super cheap barrel from this company. You can find a super cheap handguard over here, a super cheap lower over here, a super cheap trigger. And I think there's a really good benefit to that. If you don't have a lot of money and still want to run an AR-15, you can actually kind of squabble a decent one together for a reasonable price and do some upgrades to make it even better. You can get a better trigger pretty cheap. You can get different handguards pretty cheap. You can get different stocks pretty cheap. Now, you can put optics on both ARs and AKs, so I'm not really going to talk about the optics here, but the aftermarket parts for AKs, just because there are less companies that make them, are just kind of by the laws of competition more expensive. Now, despite the price, I still really do love the AK platform. I'm definitely preferential to it over the ARs. I do have some ARs. I love my ARs. I like running them, but there's just something about the AK platform that really does it for me. So despite the three reasons of this list, with the increased recoil, the increased heat and difficulty of suppression, and the overall increased cost, I still personally am going to prefer AKs over ARs. And I think that's just the way God made me at this point. I love these little guys. I think they're a ton of fun. Let me know down in the comments, do you agree or disagree with some of the things on my list? And do you prefer ARs over AKs? I feel like most of the guys on the channel are AK nerds like myself, but you let me know down in the comments. We really appreciate you watching this video today, folks. If you could hit me with the subscribe, I do really appreciate it. And we will catch you at the next Muzzle Broke video. Thanks for watching, y'all.